Tech Series Interviews. I'm Stuart Language, and I'm here at Silicon Canal in the Drop Forge in the Jewel Filter with Dave Evans, who is essentially a long-term serial entrepreneur. So, you've been doing this, setting up companies in the tech industry for quite a while.
Maybe 30 years.
What's changed about it? What's it like now by comparison to how it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Communications have changed enormously. So when you used to start up, you were pretty much on your own. It was very difficult to find a community. Even online, you couldn't get a community because there just weren't those sorts of people doing that sort of thing at the time.
And now it's hugely different.
Now it's completely different. You can start something up, you can find people who are interested in the same things you are across the world and decide what you want to do, how you want to do it, and make contacts with people. So the whole thing has changed enormously. When I started up, the whole idea of an entrepreneur was you worked in a big company. You started off working in a big company, you learnt your trade, you learnt how to do things. Often you learned how not to do things because big companies often got lots of things wrong. And then at some point you decided, okay, I'll do something on the side. I'll do a sort of weekend project in order to try and get something off the ground. Then after a while you learned that spending just weekends didn't really work because you didn't put enough effort into it. And so then you and a few friends would take the big jump and start off on your own, and that's what I did. And that was the whole way that you did entrepreneurship in those days. You learned your trade, you worked with big companies, you tried things out, and then eventually you took the big leap.
So it's all very bootstrapping. Start small, grow it day by day, small organic growth.
Yes. And none of the venture capital, even the angel capital or anything like that, you try to do it with the money in your pocket. So two things have changed enormously. One is kids come out of university and immediately start a company without having ever worked for anybody or learnt anything, which is totally different. And I have enormous admiration for them, but they face enormous challenges because they haven't been through that work situation before. And that's the reason, really, for all the incubators and the startup, so on. Because without that, they would never get to know how you do tax, how you employ people, how you do all those sort of things, which are fundamental.
All the kind of the base level things about running a business.
Yes.
Not about particularly running some kind of tech startup. It would be exactly the same for any business that made little bits.
Yes.
But you still need to know what HR is, what tax is, as you say.
Yes.
But now incubators are there and can take that kind of thing off your hands and leave you just up to the job of doing the core business.
Yes. And the other big thing that's changed is I don't think anybody really these days does the bootstrap startup, which is what I've done really through most of my companies that I've set up. Basically, the money in your pocket, enough to get you going for about 2 or 3 months, and then off you go and you try and make money. And so the whole idea is very different when you have to do that, because you actually have to start with a plan that is going to make you money in the first quarter.
Yes. If you're running it off one credit card, there's no hockey stick curve 2 years from now.
No. And there's no idea of building your customer base almost for free, and each customer, although they're not contributing any revenue, has value to the investor, and that whole thing has changed. And I don't think that has actually really got to the UK or to Europe yet. I think that's still much more an American thing.
That's a value thing.
Yes. Where if you get yourself 1 million users and you're making an enormous loss, you still have value because you've got 1 million users.
Your company has value because you've got 1 million eyes on it.
Yes.
There are people who would say that this is a ridiculous turn of affairs. Would you be one of those people?
It's very difficult to judge that. If you look at Amazon now, who are making a loss still after all these years,
Millions and millions of loss.
I mean, a huge loss. And you look at the Facebooks of the world and so on, who for years did not make any money whatsoever, but have now made an absolute fortune. So there is a business reason to do it, but I think that the number of businesses that can do that are vanishingly small. And I think that for most entrepreneurs, I still believe in you should go out there to try and make a profit, try and make money in order to fund the next version of your product, in order to keep growing your company.
Yeah, the venture capital world is very organised around hockey stick curves and having 1 million users and making a loss is fine.
Yes.
But the idea of the organic growth of making a company which is profitable from day one and then just increasingly becomes more profitable.
Yeah. And that's one of the problems with venture capital, because there's this huge gap between the small investment, the sort of 100,000 investment, and the 3 million investment. And most VCs will not look at you unless you want 3-5 million, because it's going to cost them as much to do the due diligence as for 100,000. So why bother?
But equally, if you then ask for 5 million, they want to take 25% of the company, they want to see it on the board, and they'll steer you away from slow organic growth and towards huge nuclear explosion growth, even if your company craters.
Yes.
Because from their point of view, if you're one of the 99 out of 100 that craters, they don't mind.
Yes.
But from your point of view, you don't want
it's your company.
It's your dream.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And this is a difficult situation that people are in, because if you look at a business plan properly and conservatively, and you build in growth and you say, how much money do I really need? It usually comes out in that grey area in between the two endpoints.
100 grand's not enough.
100 grand and way too much. And so you go to the investment analysts, you go to your financial people, and they will tell you, you can't ask for that much, you have to ask for more.
Yeah,
and you have to have a business plan that, in the best case, returns 100 times what you invest.
Which is insanity.
And you've already started with 5 million, so you're talking about a $500 million company, and there aren't going to be that many. And my feeling as a long-term entrepreneur who's built companies up from scratch and made them successful is we're missing out on that whole level of companies that can do things, that can be successful, that can add value to the community or to whatever they're trying to do. They always have a vision, and they try and do that, and we're missing out on that middle level of companies that can do that.
Yeah, and bigger than the corner shop.
Yes.
But smaller than someone who's trying to take over the world.
It's different. It's the difference between the lifestyle business and the entrepreneur who actually wants to build something that's much bigger than the corner shop. I mean, you could start with a corner shop if you had the idea, just like Starbucks did. You have one shop, and then eventually you have 10,000, 40,000, whatever. But if you have one shop and maybe in a few years' time you'll have two, that's not really an entrepreneur. That's more of a lifestyle thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if that's what you want, fantastic. And you can probably do that in the old ways that I was talking about, of getting money from maybe not banks, but other people to put that into place.
You could spin that kind of thing up on a few thousand.
Yes.
Literally a credit card.
Yes.
If you wanted to.
Yes.
So changing tack a little bit. You're a reasonably technical guy, as well as being an entrepreneur. I'd paint you as being on the Microsoft technology side of the fence, but you're heavily involved in the tech scene here in Birmingham. And pretty much as a given, tech scenes all over the place are very much not focused on Microsoft
very
technology.
anti-Microsoft.
It's open source believers, they still use open source technologies. You know, for the web, it's all Ruby and Python and Node.js, so on and so forth. How do you find that kind of split? Is it difficult to get people to come and talk to you because they hear that you use .NET and therefore throw up a cross?
That's a very interesting point, and the world has changed enormously. Because I've been doing this a long time, for a while Microsoft was the only game in town.
Long time, yeah.
Very long time. The only game in town. And people tried to take them down and failed. I mean, Mozilla is the obvious example of that. The stat I saw the other day was that in 2008, 90% of the devices connected to the internet use Microsoft technology. Today, it's 20%. And that's the huge difference.
So we've seen essentially the growth of two things. First of all, a move away from desktop and towards mobile tablet. And secondly, a huge growth of the web. And the web has, for a long time, been quite open source and Linux dominant.
Yes.
You still got big pockets of Microsoft stuff, but Microsoft kind of wandered out into the weeds a bit with all the .NET things and so on. Do you think?
Yes. So what Microsoft are very good at doing is coming from behind. So if they're not in a market, they can throw enormous amounts of money and clever people at something to try and do something about it. Right? And that happened with, classically Internet Explorer, where they built the best web browser on the planet, and it had 98% market share, and that was it.
Oh, you thought it was brilliant at the time?
At the time, it was way ahead of everything else. I was building Ajax stuff on IE4 when Ajax wasn't a word.
Jesse James Garrett hadn't even invented the concept. An awful lot of current web technologies were invented by the IE team all the way back then.
Yes. So, but this is the thing. So they win, and then they leave the field. They say, we've won that, we'll walk away, let's see what we can win next. And they just left it.
Yeah, they did.
And because they were number one, they were the prime target for everybody else. And with the result, especially in the web, and this has been one of the things that have really taken Microsoft down, is eventually with IE6 and its dominance in the corporate marketplace, and its non-standard use of stuff, that then they never pulled it forward. With the result that every web developer hates Microsoft by default.
Yes.
Because what you do is you get your web programming to work on the real browsers, and then you have to think about Microsoft, and you spend almost as much time as you did doing everything else just trying to get it to work on those browsers. With the result that people, certainly at the back end, hated Microsoft to an enormous degree that I don't think they ever really comprehended, because they sit in. You talk about the Apple bubble and the Steve Jobs reality. Microsoft is even more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so this weird situation came about where they invented a lot of the technologies, but then let them go stale while everybody else forged forward. And once people hate you, it's very difficult to get them back on side.
This is the thing. I mean, I know a bunch of people on the OE team and things like that, and they're all very competent engineers who are doing a very good job. But they'll say, well, why can't you give Internet Explorer a break? And you say, well, do you remember 7-8 years ago, we were on our knees pleading for you people to work with us, and you wouldn't even answer our phone calls.
Yes.
You made your bed. Now I have a great difficulty not saying you have to lie win, right? I don't care that you lose because you didn't care that we lost when you were winning. Talking about .NET, one of the interesting people who take that technology and run with it, I think, is Xamarin, who originally mono the open source implementation.
Yes.
But you're quite into the Xamarin stuff, right?
Yes.
Do you want to give people a 10-second description of what Xamarin is, and then?
So Xamarin grew out of the Mono project, which was the open source .NET. Originally, the idea was to bring .NET to Linux. Started by Miguel Diacaza, Nat Friedman, and so forth. And that sort of got eaten by Novell, who ran with it for a while. And then Novell got bought by Attachmate.
They did.
And Attachmate decided to fire all the Mono people. This was really difficult for me at the time because I was using a product called Mono Touch, which was the Mono version of .NET for iOS. Okay. So the whole idea behind Mono is it takes the concepts behind .NET, which I think is a great thing. .NET, when I first saw it back in 2000, I thought this is the way forward. This solves a lot of the problems we've got in software, especially with interoperability, different languages, different operating systems, how you build stuff that lasts for more than 6 months. And so there was a little hiatus between everybody getting fired and Xamarin started up. And fortunately for me, they decided to build a company based around building a mobile development solution. And so they brought out Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android, and started off saying we can build products that have something like about an 80% code share between platforms. And if you're in mobile development, that's a huge win. It's the other side of the coin is something like PhoneGap, Cordova, those sort of things where you write once and it tries to run everywhere. The idea with Xamarin is you have a core set of code that runs everywhere, but then when it gets to the UI and to the things that are platform specific, like storage, like sensors and so on like that, you write that still in C#, still in .NET, but natively on the platform. And the whole idea is when you've done that and you compile it, it is indistinguishable from something you've built actually using Xcode or Java. So that's
and I believe you're setting up a Xamarin interest group?
Xamarin user group. I'm trying to do that right at the moment here in Birmingham. One's going in London, has had about 3 meetings and a few people have gone down to it, and I think there's a market for it up here, so I'm going to try and start up a Xamarin user group in Birmingham. Hopefully first meeting will be in December. We're looking for a venue, and our first speaker, if we can't get a speaker, it's going to be me. But that's how we do things.
If people are interested in finding out more about Xamarin or joining the user group, how would they do that?
If you look on Meetup and look for Xamarin Birmingham, you'll find it.
Excellent. So, 2 other questions.
Yep.
The first one is, you're pretty heavily involved in the scene generally. Who would you like to see interviewed?
Ooh.
Who's someone who you think would be interesting, that people would like to hear from, or is doing something cool that I should talk to?
Elliot Hay.
Okay.
Okay.
Elliot is...
so he runs the user experience user group here. So that's a very different shift on things.
Absolutely. I spoke to both Andy Higgs and Ryan Dean Paul, who are involved in Baligo and a couple of other user experience things, goodness and so on.
Yes.
But yeah, so Elliot Hay. And finally, final question: what's your favourite biscuit?
My favourite biscuit would have to be a Jaffa cake.
Jaffa cake. The problem is they're a cake.
I know.
They're not a biscuit.
They come in a packet. If it's not a Jaffa cake, then it would have to be a jammy dodger.
Jammy Dodgers, they're perfectly loud. We like those. Excellent. So, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Dave Evans.